Welcome. This week's show with Joanna Kabanoff of Mojo Stitches is sponsored by Sassy Jack Stitchery. As part of the show, we are kicking off a stitch-along in conjunction with Sassy Jack Stitchery of Joanna's Take Wing Sampler, part of her Bushland Quaker series. You can purchase your chart and kit from Sassy Jack Stitchery at the link wetalkfiber.com/wing. And here's some additional words from Kim before we start our show.
Sassy Jack Stitchery is happy to be a sponsor of Fiber Talk. We so appreciate all the heart that Gary and team put into their show, and we always look forward to each episode. Thank you, Fiber Talk, for all you do for our needlework world. Sassy Jack's is a vibrant needlework shop located in the mountains of western North Carolina, just north of Asheville. We're in the process of moving our shop to its forever home in a historic folk Victorian on the national listing of historic places, just 3 miles down the road from our current location. While we're moving, you can find us in all our normal online haunts, our website at sassyjackstitchery.com, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We can't wait to open our doors and welcome you into our new old home. It was always the plan to be in this beautiful old house, and we've invested a huge chunk of our hearts into its renovation. Every renovated board, every push-button light switch, every old porch swing has lovingly, mostly, been placed there with our own hands. It has a wonderful, warm, welcoming feel about the place already, and your stitchy joy and laughter with friends will really make it home for Sassy Jacks. So look for us online for the next few months, as we'll be filling online and phone orders as per usual, and we'll be looking forward to the spring at the Baird House in Asheville, North Carolina. When the time comes, we'll leave the light on for you, just like your mom did when you were a kid, so you'll know it's time to come home. Now on to the show.
Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Beth Ellicott.
You're listening to Fiber Talk, the twice weekly podcast for needlework artists. Our artist this week, Joanna Kabanoff of Mojo Stitches. Joanna, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Joanna in Australia, so we dipping into that huge market of really talented people in Australia. It's kind of fun. You got a lot of people down on the other side of the world there doing a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, when I first started this podcast, never imagined I'd be talking to so many people in Australia. But boy, once you get a handle on the number of people that are doing needlework there, it really is an impressive world there. Yeah, you guys, a lot of talent. Yep.
That's good to know. But I mean, it's popular everywhere, it seems to me.
Oh yeah. But you guys have a nice corner of the market. There's no doubt about it. Yep.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. So first Needlework Expo, that kept you hopping for a couple of days?
Oh, more than a couple of days. That was a lot. It was a big learning curve for me, but such a wonderful opportunity. I'm really grateful.
Yeah. Was that something where you had got in on it early, or was it later in the process so you had to scramble a little bit?
It was about 5 weeks beforehand, so yes, scramble was putting it mildly.
Now, did you have designs already in place, or was that part of the scramble?
I had a couple half finished, but one I completely designed, stitched, and got ready. So yeah, there was a lot of 18-hour days and not a lot of sleep. And yes, I'm hoping I got everything right.
Well, you'll hear soon enough. You'll hear.
I know.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It was, but it was an unexpected opportunity for me. So I Janice from Noteworthy Needle, who put it on, very kindly included me. So I thought, oh well, I've got to give it a go.
Sure.
So that's what.
Yeah. How many designs did you release at Market then?
I had 3 new releases, plus none of my other designs had been sold in the US before. So, yeah.
Oh, so this was your first dip into the US market?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was great. I've it was a bit of a trial by fire, but it was a lot bigger
Yeah.
than I expected. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really great opportunity.
And then now all your stuff is printed. So then after that, then how many days of shipping before you got caught up?
Well, yeah, a few. I actually sold everything out almost straight away, so I had to rush and get a whole bunch more printed, and so it was a lot. But I've learned a lot for next time, and I'll be really ready to go.
Yeah, that's interesting. People who do the first time at the Nashville Market, so often that happens. Within a day, they're sold out, and then they're just taking orders and can't wait to get home to get more printed to ship them out. So you had the same experience. So welcome to that club.
Well, it's hard to know. You know, it's a financial sort of outlay to get a lot printed, and you don't want to overextend yourself. So yeah, it's difficult to know, but better idea for next time.
Yeah, you can't guess, and I'm sure that the next time you do a show, it'll be still even a guess, and you may overshoot or still undershoot. Hard to know, and
I figure that just comes with experience. So we'll see how that goes.
5 years from now, you'll have it down.
Oh, let's hope.
So how did you get started stitching? Was this something from when you were a child or later on?
Yeah, no, my mother taught me to stitch when I was very, very young. I can't remember how young exactly, but I seem to remember doing it my whole life. My mother was actually born in America and always had a real interest in American folk art. So samplers were something that she was very aware of and that she used to stitch. So, I learned from her.
So cross stitch from the earliest you can remember then?
Yeah, pretty much. Different types of embroidery and quilting and things as well, but very much cross stitch as well.
Yeah. So, but that quilting, boy, it pops up all the time. A lot of people do quilting as either their primary needlework type thing, or at least a secondary thing. That's I've never done it, but a lot of people always have that as like a second thing.
Yeah, it's very meditative, because it's very repetitive kind of stitching. It's very calming, and you get a lovely, nice warm quilt out of it. So it's all good.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And the colors are always gorgeous too. It's always fun to choose fabric colors and play with that.
Absolutely.
Yep. Now it says here, I'm most intrigued because it says in your description somewhere, I read it somewhere, you list yourself as writer, editor, historian, bookseller, and tutor.
Yeah, well, that's I think you got that off my LinkedIn page. So.
Oh, did I? Okay.
That's sort of my professional stuff. I actually trained as a historian. I have a doctorate in history that I completed about 10 years ago. And since then, I've worked as a writer and editor. So that's kind of what I do. I also worked in bookstores for a long time and done a lot of teaching, that kind of thing.
So writer and editor of what? Articles, books?
Well, at the moment, I wrote my history stuff, which was a torture I wouldn't wish on anyone. Academia, man. Oh, please. Ugh, don't get me started. I mainly work now in what's called instructional design. So I write online course materials to help other people learn, which is something that, is a really great way to help and educate other people. And I do what's called academic editing. So I help other people with their PhD theses and things, which, yes, having been through it, I know exactly what they're going through. Their hands a little.
So are you doing coursework for university level people or younger?
Yeah, some of it's university, a lot of it's vocational training. So different hobbies and things, and I get to learn interesting things from it. I know how to tile a floor and anesthetize a giraffe and all very useful things like that.
That's fun.
At least you're always new,
Well, you never know. So
Right.
yeah, I had to work on a zookeeping course once, so that's where the whole giraffe thing came into.
Do you find now I edit a trade magazine for manufacturers, and I've done trade magazines for 40 years, and
Right.
in all different topics. And
Yeah.
the hardest one was Research and Development magazine, and that was high end science research, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I always figured anything else is simple after that. But I've always approached the magazines. I mean, it's an educational tool, but to me, the principles are the same no matter what the topic. Do you find that?
Very much so. You do have to gain a certain amount of specialized knowledge on the topic, but yeah, basically the principles are the same. You're trying to help people communicate the work as simply and clearly as possible, which in academic writing in particular is difficult because it's not really set up to be simple or clear. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's good to be able to help people. I know the amount of work that goes into these things, so to be able to help them is a real privilege.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's the way, people say, how can you do all these topics? And yeah, same thing for me. I just give me some basic knowledge. And I had a wizened veteran long ago say to me, he said, if you just shut up and listen, you'll probably learn things. And I've always kept that in mind when I'm talking to experts. Just let them go. And you might learn something, and then the next time you're just that much smarter. But the principles are the same. Yeah, you just got to deliver the information so that people can understand it. And
yeah. Good advice.
Yeah, so that's full-time job then.
Yes, it's a little less than full time at the moment with COVID changes, but yeah, that's sort of what I've been doing for a while.
Yeah.
I was working home before it was mandatory.
Okay. I wonder how long it's going to be before we don't have to add the COVID qualifier. It'd be nice to get done with that.
It will, but
Yeah.
it will happen again. I've studied the Spanish flu and the Black Plague and the like, and it we'll get back to normal.
Yeah, hope so. So then the history part helps me understand then your interest in samplers.
Yeah, well, I studied women's history in particular, and samplers are such a wonderful insight into women's experience because this is very often unrecorded in the historical record. So samplers are a tremendous way to kind of connect with primarily women of the past. So yeah, they're tremendously rich documents if you want to look at them that way.
Did your interest in that stem from your PhD work, or was that just from your stitching side interest?
Yeah, that was a side interest. My PhD work was quite different. That was on illness and disability and how people construct meaning out of experience of disability. So that was quite different.
Yeah, that's that's slightly different. Yes.
Yeah.
Just a
so
bit.
I'm not a world expert on samplers, but I'm certainly learning. So, yeah.
I was just wondering if your historical background, do you think that helps you when you're doing the research on the girls?
Absolutely. I have an enormously wonderful helper. Shout out Alison, who does a lot of who's been doing a lot of the genealogical specialist research for me. I don't have access to a lot of the databases specifically for that. I'm getting to that. But just in terms of social history and in terms of trying to get in the minds of the girls who were stitching these things, I think it helps enormously.
What do you pick out when you look at samplers? And you own a few, right? You've collected a few.
Yeah.
How does that hit you when you look at a sampler? Do you start to immediately see into the young girl, or is it are you looking at more of the historical, the motifs, and where they came from?
Well, I tend to gravitate to the ones that are a little bit unusual and a bit different. Partly that's financial. I can't afford the enormous, fabulous ones that are quite out of my budget. So I look for the ones that are a bit unusual. And I like the ones that express a certain amount of personality. And I find in reproducing them, in stitching them, you do get little intuitions and insights into the girls' personalities. Some of them you can tell it's been stitched really quickly, and you get this idea. It's like this girl's like, I don't want to do this. So hurry up, hurry up. And other ones are incredibly precise and neat, and you can tell she's had enormous pride in her work. And just those kind of things give you a real insight. And the color choices, the choice of motifs, whether she creates them herself or whether they're sort of copybook ones, there's actually some really interesting ways to interpret them.
Yeah, I often wonder that. Just in the few that I've done, there's worked on anyway. I haven't finished that many, but to me, you can start to pick out, those girls who I'd rather just go out and play in the mud if it's all right with you.
Absolutely, and you can't blame them. So
right,
yeah.
You see that sloppiness, and I'm sure in the originals on the backside it really shows.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually. I wish more people could see. I'll have to put up some more pictures online or something to show you the backs, because they're quite instructive, because there's a lot of carrying threads and enormous messes, and some of them never cut their ends off, and it's quite liberating. So you don't have to be nice and neat on the back, because they certainly won't.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of freedom with your own work, yes.
Yeah, and I actually heard a conservator say once that the ones where they actually carry the threads actually last longer. So you're actually adding to the longevity of your piece if you carry your threads on the back.
Oh.
That's nice to know.
Exactly. So there you go. You've got permission now.
Wow. If I was confident my kids weren't just going to throw mine away, I'd do that. But...
Oh, no. You'll worry about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it won't matter to me. So, yeah. So it also interests me because, a lot of the samplers we see are, like you say, the ones that most people can't afford, higher end, ultra big, big and in perfect shape or near perfect shape. But I often wonder about all those other samplers that have been beat up, have some holes in them, and there must be an element of fun there with ones where you have to kind of interpret what went on, where some threads might be missing, or.
Absolutely, they're the ones in my collection. In fact, I have one that I'll be working on for next year that is barely above a rag. It is extremely ripped and torn, and there's holes everywhere, and I'm really looking forward to sort of getting to grips with that one and bringing it back to life, because this little girl who did this put an enormous amount of herself and an enormous amount of effort into it. So to bring it back for people to appreciate, I think is a lovely thing.
Yeah.
So, question: do you match your colors from the back of the sampler or from the front?
It depends. It really depends, and I struggle with that because I love the faded antique look of samplers. I think a lot of people who stitch them love that, but that was not what the stitcher intended. You turn them around to the back, and quite often they're incredibly bright and vivid, and you just get the feeling that the girl's sitting there going, I've got all the colors and I'm going to use them. And so it's a bit of a struggle to decide what to do with that. It comes down to each individual sampler, I think, and I'm certainly looking to go in a more colourful direction. I've taken some risks with some of the samplers I've done so far, and people seem to be really liking them. So I'm trying to look at different ways to reproduce them and different ways to present them that would bring them to a more modern audience.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things for me is just that, because the majority of the stuff that we see is the ground cloth is dyed or whatever to look old, and threads are muted and so on and so forth. And I wonder that all the time. You know, those that wasn't the way they started. So why don't we have a look at the bright colors? Let's see what the originals were, and maybe even go a little further, because I mean they are little girls at some point. You know, they're gonna like bright colors for the most part.
Well, that's good for me to hear, because that's kind of the direction I'm looking to go. And one of my new releases that I did very much focus on the color. And also in the way I presented it. This is Sarah Handley that I did, this wonderful house with these palm trees and things. And I framed it in this really bright red frame, which is quite unusual for an antique reproduction, because I think that brings out the design. So you're not focusing on it being old and trying to look old, as much as I respect that. To me, it brings out the design elements and makes it quite modern. And people seem to really like it. So, yeah,
well,
that
one's just adorable. I'm drawn to the roof on that. The building is obviously not a house, but because it's so big.
Yeah.
But, and the little red chili peppers, as you called them, I
see them any other way.
I know. Once you said that, I read that. They look like little red chili peppers. Now I can't unsee that.
Yeah. I get a real southern vibe from that sampler. The trees that look like palm trees, and I wonder if it's a school, because it seems too big for a house to me. So I unfortunately couldn't pin down the stitcher in historical records yet. But I wonder whether she was somewhere warm, because I get a very warm vibe from it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see the chili peppers. Okay. All right. I'll buy that. Sure.
I think, but they look like chili peppers to me.
and those trees, they're fabulous. And I don't
like palm trees to me.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm not normally drawn to big houses, but that big building, with the red tiled roof, or
Yeah.
I just think it just draws me in.
Yeah, I'm not normally a house, stitcher either, but I came across this one that was I thought was so unusual. It was originally done in wools, and I just love the color and the design of it. So it was really fun to reproduce that one.
Yeah, and since listeners can't see this, Sarah Handley, we'll have it in the pictures for the thing. But Sarah Handley, it's a real nice. About 2/3 of it is surrounded by this border with what looks like chili peppers, and that's all alphabet with some those eyelet stitches in part of that alphabet, right? Yeah, it looks like it.
Yes. Yes.
And then below that is a building with two palm tree shaped trees on either side. It's a beautiful little sampler, just really cute. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a giant size either, so it's something you can reasonably do. I love the giant ones, but they can be quite intimidating.
Yes, they can. Now, so talk about reproduction samplers, and then you've also done your own samplers, and I got to get a copy of Take Wing, but talk about the. Pardon me.
I can do that for you.
That wasn't why I mentioned it, but I'll be happy to have one. But talk about that difference now. So which did you do first, the original samplers or the reproduction, or were they kind of a simultaneous thing for you?
It's been both. I did my first design. I actually planned to do as my final art project in my last year of high school. I was going to design a cross stitch as my art project. I had to leave school because of ill health, so I never got to finish it. But it's still because it was a good idea. So I've kind of been designing my own things quietly and just giving them away to friends and things for a really long time. And then when I sort of decided to bravely branch out, I sort of did both at the same time, because to me, doing the reproductions is me learning how to design. Because by studying these so closely and by reproducing them, I am very much teaching myself the basics of how to design. It's like when you're learning to paint, you do copies of the old masters. I kind of feel like I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I learn a great deal from every piece that I do and every reproduction that I do as well. So it's an educative kind of thing for me.
So that juncture when you decide, all right, I've been designing, that's impressive. You've been designing since high school, but what is it that makes you make that leap to do designs that you're actually going to sell? Was it just, hey, I got to take a run at this, or a lot of peer pressure? What happened there?
It was quite difficult, actually. I'm pretty much the most introverted person in the history of the earth. So putting myself out there was very difficult. But for some reason, I just felt like I think I'd been doing the writing and editing for such a long time and was stuck in front of the computer all day, and really kind of rediscovered stitching after a break for a little while, and was just so enjoying working with beautiful fabric and working with colors and working with texture that it's something I wanted to share. So I just kind of bit the bullet and did it.
Okay.
Why did you decide to start with like the Quaker motifs for like your two original?
Yeah, I did a few smaller pieces before then, but it was the Quakers that I really feel like I've hit my stride with. I really enjoy Quaker designs, and I actually did the first one, Bushland Quaker, which is based on Australian flowers with a couple of birds tucked in there. I did that at the height of the pandemic when it was early on here. We couldn't get threads from overseas, so I used threads from a local dyer here, Cottage Garden Threads, which are just stunning, and fabric by Jay's X Stitch on Etsy, who's a local dyer as well that I love. And I just wanted to do something reflective of home for me that was different. And for some reason, I was flicking around through my books, and I have this wonderful book, I think it's the Ackworth motif pattern book that I was looking through, and I used a couple of those traditional motifs and changed them and switched them around to reflect what I wanted to portray, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. I was kind of surprised myself, to be honest.
Because I mean, when I first looked, I was just kind of looking through your site, and I saw, okay, that's the Quaker, and then I was like, wait. Are just, those aren't just normal quote unquote Quakers. They obviously have different birds in them and different. And
well, I've been really surprised by how many people in the US want to stitch them, because I kind of thought, oh dear, they're Australian things, no one's going to want them except for us. So it's been really wonderful that people are interested, and it's been really humbling. I think Quakers are there's something about the symmetry of them that I think is really interesting design-wise. And they're also quite quick and easy to stitch up too, and I think that's kind of appealing as well.
Yeah.
I loved on both of those, the Bushland and the Take Wing. I loved on your blog there where you show the different animals and plants that were inspiration for each of those motifs. I love that nature tie-in. It really added meaning for me, and that was the Take Wing one was what really stood out for me. Seeing all the birds that you used to generate those things, and I mean, for me, it was just a extra meaning, and whether they're from Australia or Illinois in the U.S. doesn't really matter. I mean, they're beautiful animals, and then you interpret them, and so immediately I think, hey, that's fun stuff to stitch.
Oh, well, I'm glad you found that. I always like to know the stories behind designs, so for me it was important to put that up. And yeah, some of those birds and flowers are local to where I am at the moment, and some of them are throughout the rest of the country. And yeah, just having the extra sort of, oh, there's a story about that one, I think adds another layer to it. And, we've got some really wacky birds here, so it's good to share.
You guys have the corner on wacky animals in general, so.
Yes.
Yeah, we're pretty good at that.
Yep. Yeah, you win. You win the competition. There's no doubt.
Yes. In fact, I homeschooled my kids, and my boys especially like studying all the poisonous animals that in Australia.
Everyone goes on about that, but we don't have bears. Like, I'm much more frightened of your bears than, a little spider that will leave you alone.
It's just I think it was the boy thing,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'll stay away from the spiders. Thank you.
Yeah, they generally leave you alone if you leave them alone.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So where do you see your design business going? Do you see more original samplers, or is reproduction really where your heart's at?
Oh, both. I would really like to keep both going. As I said, each one I think informs the other. So for me, it's very much both. I'm looking at some quite different kind of approaches. I'm looking to bring in some other types of stitching into my designs. I'd really kind of like to cross the embroidery on one side, cross stitch on the other kind of border that seems to be there.
Ooh, keep talking. You got my attention.
Well, it just seems like there are lots of people who embroider who think cross stitch is boring, and there are lots of people who do cross stitch who find embroidery intimidating. And I think there's a lot of room to kind of combine them, and that's something I'm really interested in looking into.
Oh, that's exciting right there. All right.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Both Gary and I like doing embroidery, and
yeah,
cross stitch I enjoy cross stitch. I find it relaxing, and the collars and that. But there's something about adding French knot or doing a stem stitch or.
Absolutely. It gives it a wonderful texture. I love cross stitch. I love the meditative aspect of it. It's very calming, and there's something very satisfying about putting something in the right spot that when you're feeling anxious or stressed out is actually enormously calming. But cross stitch can also be very flat, and there are some wonderful designers sort of incorporating texture into their designs, but that's a direction I very much like to go in.
Yeah, well, Beth and I are working on, Beth and Jennifer and I, all three of us are working on Karen Kluba's Spring Hill design.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we're, all three of us in one way or another doing is adding, where normally it would be just a straight stitch or a cross stitch, adding other kinds of stitches to put a little more life into it. And it's been a fun experiment just to try things out. And so when you talk about doing a sampler design where you're actually intentionally putting it in there, that's exciting to hear.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear. I didn't want to scare people off. So, yeah, it's something that I do a lot. I don't think I've ever completed a design exactly how it was called for. And because to me, one of the fascinating things about being a designer in this way is you're facilitating other people to create a piece of art. And for me, that piece of art should be individual. So I love it when people change things, and I love it when people use completely different threads or completely different fabric, or change the design around, because they're making something that is purely theirs. And that's something I would very much like to encourage in my designs.
Yeah, I was having an exchange today, the day we're recording, which is several weeks prior to when this actually shows up, but wondering about cross-stitch threads. and what are cross stitch threads and what are needlepoint threads? And so my response was, there are no such things. It's it's what will work with the ground cloth you're working with, and the needle you have or can get, and the look you want. And you can't really classify those things. And it was just writing an answer to her really got me thinking about how that needs to be emphasized more. That there's no set of shelves for cross stitch and needlepoint and embroidery threads.
There's no rules. It's like the Sarah Handley sampler that I reproduced. That was originally done in wools on a fairly canvasy type material. A lot of old samplers are sort of done like that, done in wool work. And I, reproduced it into cross stitch using cotton and linen. So that's already a shift. But you can also shift that in another direction and do it in something else completely wacky. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that one and I'm thinking, okay, if you the border and a stem stitch like you were doing with yours, Gary, and whipped it, and then you've got the little red chili peppers. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would be gorgeous. I'm all for that. And I think a lot of cross stitchers don't know how good they are. I've found that with a friend of mine. She didn't know how good she was at stitching, and a lot of these, embroidery stitches that we call specialty stitches. If you've been cross stitching for a while, you can pick that up in no time. You really can, and it's a wonderful way to keep learning and keep developing as well.
Yeah, I've really grown to dislike that term specialty stitches. It's like it sets it up on some higher level that that only experts can achieve, and to me, it's not a good description. I mean, they're just all stitches, and
absolutely, yeah, they're really just embroidery stitches, and cross stitch is an embroidery stitch. So I try to call them embroidery stitches instead of specialty stitches, precisely for that reason, and to take the intimidation factor down, because if you can cross stitch, you can learn to do anything else.
Right.
Yeah. You're just putting it in a different hole and not making an X, but it's still going in a hole. Yeah.
Oh, except stump work. Stump work terrifies me. So that's just I haven't tackled that yet. That's intimidating to me.
Yeah, those people have a different vision. I'd like to have that vision someday, but they have a different vision. Yeah.
It's remarkable. I would love to learn it, but that's maybe another lifetime.
Yes.
Yep. So, and you sent us a couple of embroidery photos where it looked like you kind of, it's kind of a free form look.
Yeah. I do textile art pieces as well. There's not many of them online yet. That's something I've been doing for friends and family for a long time, and I'm just sort of starting to put that out there. But I do these kind of minimalist pieces where I kind of sculpt with fabric and do very minimalist kind of things. One of them's based on a seascape that I really enjoy doing, and others are based on other sort of nature motifs, which is kind of my inspiration, I guess.
Do you dye your own textiles for these?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of them for the seascapes I do, yeah. I've been thinking of putting some of those together as kits, but I haven't quite decided yet.
I'm glad to hear that. I thought, there's a couple of them, so maybe that's a new area for you, but that's old hat. You just haven't shown them.
Well, a little bit. Like I said, I'm still a newbie, so it's a matter of just sort of getting the courage and putting it out there. I was lucky enough to have some of those pieces exhibited in some local community art galleries, which was a really wonderful experience. And it's a different type of stitching, doing something that's not based on counting threads. And trying to create a very different look. It's an interesting way to kind of free up your stitching and your ideas. It's I really enjoy it.
And in the couple that you sent us, it looked like it's that approach that so many have, where whatever materials or threads deliver the visual that you want is what you use. You don't stick with just threads or just cloth. It's whatever.
No, yeah. I try to use sort of whatever I have and try not to, I'm very conscious as well of minimizing waste. So I like to use scraps and bits and pieces from other projects and things and create a piece out of that to make the most of everything that we use.
Is there an art background in you, or is this just something that's developed over the years?
I studied a lot of art theory at school more than practice. I've always made things. Both my parents are quite creative, and from a very young age, we always made things. So it's something that's always been in my experience that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah.
But not formal, no.
Well, it obviously works. I mean, there's and if you've studied art, then you don't have to study that very long before you start to see what's good and what isn't, and what makes good art work.
Well, it takes time, and it's in the eye of the beholder. So, I'm sure lots of people look at my stuff and go, oh, I don't know. But, I just try to do things that please me, and that I find some interest in. That's all you can do, I guess.
So describe your color palette, your favorite color palette. Is it bright, subdued?
I try to do the subdued, but I really do love color. I like jewel tones very much. So as much as I try to keep it subdued for certain designs, I struggle with it. It's not my natural inclination. It depends on the project, though. It really depends on the project.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, just go crazy one time,
Yeah. Right. See what I can do.
Yeah. Just go nuts. Yep. So your personal stitching, you mainly anymore stitch just what you design, or are you still stitching other people's work?
That's the big change in actually moving into designing your own stuff. You no longer have time to stitch other people's work, and I really miss that. I'm really missing that. But no, I just don't have time. I have so many ideas I want to get done and want to get finished that it's pretty much my own stuff at this point.
So do you keep a notebook or a list of your ideas?
Yeah, because as soon as you go, oh no, I'll remember that. Yeah, no, you won't. So you got to write it down.
Yep, that's so true. Yep, it gets worse, by the way. Yeah.
I'm older than I look, so don't worry. I'm having trouble already.
Okay. Yeah, no, I write stuff down anymore that I would never write down before. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I forget. Yeah. Yep. So like when you're doing your own designs, are your designs mainly done in cotton or silk, or what do you, when people buy one of your charts, what are they going to be charted like?
Well, they all have full DMC conversions and full Gentle Arts Weeks classic colourworks as well. In my Quakers, I've used an Australian dyer called Cottage Garden Threads. I sell the thread packs for those on my Etsy store and through some of the retailers who bought from me at Needlework Expo. So I can get them, but they have full conversions as well. Sometimes I use silk. I'm sort of getting more into that. But I generally stick with cottons as they're easier to access for people, I think.
Yeah. Silks
are lovely, but they're also, very expensive, and I'm quite conscious of trying to give people economical options because it can be an expensive hobby.
Yeah, it can get out of control. Yep.
Yes.
Sure can. Yep. Yeah. So talk about those the threads. What was the name of that company?
They're called Cottage Garden Threads. They're actually hand dyed in Victoria, which is one of the lower states in Australia. And I have loved them for a long time. They do really unique colour combinations. They were traditionally created for embroidery. They haven't been used in cross-stitch a lot. I think I saw Jeanette Douglas used one once in a design. So they're not always easy to get in the US, but I'm working on that. And yeah, they have some beautiful, beautiful colour combinations that, considering I was doing Australian flowers and birds, I just felt like I had to do Australian threads, and everyone's been really receptive to them, and I think people will love them.
They a smoother cotton?
Yeah, they're DMC base as well. They're just stranded cotton, same sort of thing, just really unique colour combinations.
Oh, okay. There, Beth, there's something else for you to collect. See?
Thanks, Mary. I've heard of them. I just haven't been able to get my little grubby little hands on them.
Wow, we can do something about that too.
Oh, yeah.
Joanna will just dispatch a box promptly.
I will do my best. They're really, really lovely to work with. I enjoy them a lot. So, but, you know, how we all are, we're all a sucker for new threads. So, you know, and it's different, you know.
And it looks like the colors on them are lovely. Looking at your Quakers.
Yeah, they really are. But like I said, I do conversions into traditional overdyes and DMCs as well. The Quakers are actually a combination of cottage garden threads and DMC, because I think the mixture of some that are a bit flatter and some of them that are hand dyed gives an interesting kind of movement.
Yeah.
Well, it works. They're beautiful colors. They really are. Very nice. Yeah, yeah. So, do you have a studio, or is all this happening in the, you know, at your desk where you do your work?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm pretty squished into it, at the moment. So yeah, packing and folding and everything for the Needlework Expo was a lot of things on the floor everywhere. Right, yeah. A studio would be nice, but maybe one day.
And so
I'm working on it.
Now, do you stitch in hand or do you use a hoop?
I stitch in hand. I used to use hoops. I actually worked in a needlework store like 20 years ago and was always roused on to stitch using a hoop. But I found as I had more I wanted to get done, I just had to get quicker. So I taught myself to stitch in hand. And yeah, it is much quicker. And yeah, that's pretty much how I stitch everything now.
I'm not sure I've ever heard anybody say stitching in hand is quicker. That's interesting.
Because you can sort of, it's not stab in and out. You can kind of, you know, pick up the thread and use one movement to sort of go in and out, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the sewing method, right?
Yeah, exactly. I knew I was looking for something. Yes, that is actually quicker. So that's my sort of reasoning for doing it.
So out of necessity, the hoop goes on the shelf then. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I still use it occasionally for specific things, but I think I took extra care doing the house on Sarah Handley because it's white stitching, so you've got to keep that extra neat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just got the hang of it, and it's just much more comfortable now, and that's how I sew everything.
I was going to say maybe I'll give it a try, but I won't. I got to be something's got to hold that cloth. Sorry.
Well, it depends on your stitching as well. You know, if you're stitching really big pieces, it can be quite awkward to stitch in hand. So it sort of depends.
Yeah. No, I'll just stick with something to hold it. That's all right.
Yeah, I think I'd sew myself to my pants because I haven't done it before. So I think I better stick to something that's lifted high and stitched myself. You know.
Yes, I haven't stitched myself in place yet, but you never know.
I'd pay to watch that, Beth. If you wanted.
I'm sure you would, Gary. I'm sure.
So your linen right to your pants. That'd be fun to watch for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd take that.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Joanna, this has been fun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's an honor to be on.
Well,
Yeah.
we've learned some things. This is great. Always learn stuff. So, yep.
Oh, good. Well, much more to come. So.
All right. So, yeah. When is the next one? A couple months?
Oh, I'm working on a bunch already, so we'll see how fast we can get them out. But yeah, it'll be a little while.
Okay. All right. Well, I know Sassy Jax is carrying your stuff, so we'll keep up with Kim then.
Yes, that was a great honor.
Yep. So she'll keep us informed. Well, this has been great fun. Thanks for taking time, and best of luck as you move along with new designs.
Thank you very much.
All
Thanks,
right.
Joanne.
Thanks to everybody for listening.